It's time for Push2Plat, your weekly trophy podcast with Mindi and CJ.
Hello, listeners. Welcome to Push2Plat episode 45. We are back. We are back in the new decade, 2020. Look, it only took 4 weeks for us to start up again. That's not bad. I know all the other podcasts, day one, they're off and racing, but we do things a little bit differently here. Mindi, welcome back. It's been a good break. It's been a refreshing break. How are you coping there in the winter of the US?
I'm back.
That's creepy.
I'm good. It's in hindsight, it's a good thing we took some time off because I was really sick for like 2 weeks. There was something going around, and it's one of those things where you're sick and you're starting to get better, and then nope, just kidding, it's going to stick around another 2 or 3 days.
I hate that. Yes, yeah. But you're feeling better now?
I am. Yes, thank you.
Excellent. Well, would you like to? I think you're going to set the parameters of this rough show to start us off, aren't you? Just in case we've got any. There are no parameters. That's the secret, listeners.
No, you make me sound awful. It's not like that at all. No, I just wanted to address. We've gotten a couple of. First of all, everyone who's written in, thank you. We love you. Please continue. This is not any sort of criticism of that, but we have noticed there have been a couple of emails where people are saying, why don't you talk about trophies more, like how to earn trophies? And I think CJ would agree with me that the aim of this podcast isn't really to kind of break down nitty-gritties of how to earn specific trophies. Like, it's not the kind of game where you pick, or podcast where you pick like one game and go step by step how to unlock every trophy to earn the platinum. I'm sorry if you thought it was. For me, and I think for CJ as well, the kind of idea with this is to get, not so much talk about news, not so much talk about AAA stuff, unless one of us has played it. The reason this works is that CJ plays a lot of the brand new stuff, and I'm, hip deep in my backlog. So it's a good combination of stuff that's new right now and stuff that you may have missed just on the deluge of new releases every week. Talk about whether they're easy to platinum to begin with, kind of go into it if it sounds like, it's something you might be interested in. And then we have this topic just to give you something to listen to while you're grinding out all those easy platinums. And then hit you with the spam of the week at the end of it. I think CJ agrees with me. That's the idea.
Yeah, I think that's very, very well put. And I'd just like to echo Mindy's thoughts at the start there and welcome the new listeners because, Mindi, we have an increasing basis. I've been noticing this in December, but even through January, we have an increasing basis not only in Germany, but also in Sweden. So, whether
more
they're
Germans and Swedes?
I know, whether they're using us as an English language podcast, I'm not sure somewhere. But look, it's fantastic to see. And the most exciting thing for me is we have picked up at least one Japanese listener. So, Ike, if that is you, I am impressed, sir. I am impressed. I know you can only understand every second word I say, but I'm impressed that you're trying. So thank you. So look, why don't we introduce the guest today, listeners? It's a very special guest, I feel. In fact, I don't think we're going to find anyone that plays as many Japanese games as this man. And this is we're talking about the serious Japanese games here. We're not talking about the skipping VN style games. So look, without further ado, can I welcome to today's podcast, Mr. Boston George. George, how are you today, sir?
Hi, thanks for having me, guys.
Not at all. So look, what we're going to do...
We caught him between star oceans.
Yep. Well, you really have.
Yeah, I was thinking you would be running out at some point, but they just seem to keep going, don't they?
They're the game that never ends.
That's one way to put it,
basically.
For sure. So what we like to do at the start here is just get a little, if you're comfortable, just a little history here about your PSN name, why you chose it, etc., etc. So can we start there?
Yeah, sure. I mean, mine's not as bold and dangerous as a story as anyone else's, but I'm originally from Boston. My name is George, so it kind of made sense. I watched I don't know if anyone ever saw the movie Blow with Johnny Depp in 2001. He was a famous drug dealer at that time named George, and they called him Boston George. And of course, when I saw that movie, I was like, aha, that's a perfect name for me. And then, well, I tried using that when I registered my username, and unfortunately it was taken. So I was like, all right, I guess I have to get creative. And so we got BOS 10 George, which is continues to confuse everybody, but it's pronounced Boston George, yes.
My analysis didn't go that deep. I stopped at, oh, your name is George and you're from Boston. That must be why your name is Boston George.
Yes. Well, I mean, I may have been bitten by a radioactive Bostonian at one point in time. I mean, I can't rule that out, but no, it is that simple.
I noticed that I don't feel so bad now, George, because I noticed Mindi just did it as well. She said boss 10, George. So it's very catchy, listeners. It's hard to say the word Boston, George. But anyway, it really is. But look, at least we're not boss low, George. Although, I like that. On the lowdown, George. You better be careful there. Okay, anyway, look. Let's not descend down that route too quickly. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your gaming history, George, for the listeners?
Oh, well, I'm gonna probably date myself a little bit, but it's probably not a bad thing. I've ranging back from Nintendo, original Nintendo with Mario and Duck Hunt, and kind of owned or emulated every system since then, with the exception of Xbox. Sorry about that, CJ. But yeah, so started with those, went the Genesis route, also known as the Master System in other areas. But yeah, I played Genesis, then eventually got myself a PlayStation. My very first PlayStation 1 game was Mega Man X4. I figured I'd drop that in there.
You didn't have to. That wasn't a requirement, but anyway.
Let's sidebar. Less than 10 minutes in.
All right, there it
George.
is. Hey, it's a
Let's
big.
talk Mega Man.
I'm a big Mega Man fan, so I figured I'd drop it in there. But yeah, it's been PS1, PS2, PSP and Vita, PS3, and now PS4, and eventually PS5 for me. And definitely trophies locked me in. That was the thing that I think most of us, when that happened, realized we never realized we needed. But yeah.
Now, did you choose PlayStation because it was like the JRPG console?
I honestly don't remember. I mean, I was probably like 10 years old when PS1 came out. I think, one of my friends said something like, oh, this cool thing. I know my cousin had one, and so it definitely interested me from that aspect, but I didn't really know any better. But yeah, I mean, it was just always interesting to me, and I remember I saved up my money, but at this point in time is when most kids' parents were like, all right, look, we realize this video game thing, we don't know if we like it or not, so we're not going to pay for it anymore. So I saved up my Christmas money and birthday money and everything, and bought myself a PlayStation 1 at that point.
Perfect. Can I ask, when did you find JRPGs then? Early on or later?
It was right around that PS1 era. I think my cousin, I borrowed Final Fantasy VII from him and played and played and played and played that. And shortly after that, Star Ocean 2 was the other one that I played constantly. So that's kind of where you see my pattern of gaming really is along those JRPG routes. But I've always been a big fan of them.
Oh, so you missed the awesome SNES ones. Oh, that makes me sad.
I did. I never had a SNES. I ended up emulating it later on, and then going back and playing Chrono Trigger and all those things, and really playing Chrono Trigger after playing or Chrono Cross was the second one, right? Yeah. So playing Chrono Trigger after playing Chrono Cross first on the PlayStation and being like, oh, where did this come from? Same thing with Star Ocean 2 was my first one. Going back, playing the original Star Ocean, the original Final Fantasies, and all those. But yeah, I missed that boat.
Gonna do a deep cut. Did you play Radical Dreamers?
No, I did not.
That was a SNES game. It only came out in Japan, but it was fan translated. And you said you emulated the SNES, so I didn't know.
Yeah, that's the same.
But it's like it's a visual novel, but it's set in the Chrono Trigger universe, and it stars some of the characters. I played this once back in the mid-90s. And it stars I think Kid and I want to say Lynx from Chrono Cross.
Weird.
but it predates Chrono Cross, so it really is part of the canon and leads into
That's really
um
interesting.
Chrono Cross. But it's a visual novel, so
Huh.
I can understand why a lot of people who like Chrono Trigger and Chrono Cross would not necessarily play it.
Yeah. And that's kind of like the first Star Ocean wasn't originally translated into English. It was on SNES. It stayed in Japan, and then I think DJAP, who did all those emulator translations, did that one, and it came out in English, and that's when I got a chance to play it.
Perfect. Can I also ask, this always interests me with people that are, more exposed to the Eastern games. Do you speak Japanese, or can you read any Japanese?
I cannot speak or read any Japanese whatsoever, which is very unfortunate. Because, like I said, Star Ocean 2 is like my biggest, it was like a game I grew up on. And so I've started this Star Ocean renaissance, as we'll probably talk about later. But,
Hmm.
that was my favorite one, is Star Ocean 2. And guess which one has not been ported in English to the later generations? Is that's the only one. So I had to actually go back and play it using a camera translator. I remember a lot of stuff from it because I played it so much, but I had little stuff like item creation and things. I used my camera to translate, like, what is this? Okay, that's mithril. I put that to this sword and make this sword, and it's a little tedious, but I got through it.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, excellent. So you also mentioned, because we will get into all the Star Ocean later in the topic, listeners, but you also mentioned here that you have served in the military, and I'd love to ask you a little bit about how gaming sort of maybe went a little bit with that. I don't want to say hand in hand, but as I suppose as an activity to provide some relief, I suppose, and maybe some stress, stress relief.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and it's not a big secret. A lot of guys in the military are just big gamers. I mean, a lot of them lean more towards the Call of Duty aspect of things, and Halo, and the typical like AAA type stuff. But yeah, it is a great stress relief when you're in that stressful environment. I was the United States Army for 8 years, deployed to Afghanistan for 9 months, lived in South Korea for a year, and then jumping duty stations all over the country. But yeah, I mean that's just kind of something that, yeah, at the end of the day you relax, play a game, and go do it again later.
Now, this might be an ignorant question, so just ignore it if it is. But in some of these places, like, is the internet good enough to play these games, or are you connected in that way, or are they all sort of just playing locally in a disc and physical sort of games and media?
For me personally, when I was in Afghanistan, it was all locally offline.
Yes.
I tried downloading, like if you downloaded anything, it took like a day and a half to do anything, and then it may get corrupted. But I remember I think I was playing like Dead Rising and some other games like that during while I was overseas. But yeah, it's not feasible unless you do like a LAN type thing. But once again, it's usually guys playing Halo or Black Ops or those kind of things.
I remember when the Xbox One was announced and it was supposed to be an always online thing. Like there was a huge outcry from active service members saying we can't. Like this is a way we de-stress, and we can't play your system
Yeah, I remember that too.
because the internet's just not that good.
Mm. Interesting, interesting. Okay, well that gives us a little basis here. I think we should move on to what we've been playing, because as the listeners that are used to our show know that we roughly always hit the 2 hour mark, and I feel we'll spend a lot of time in the topic today. So let's push forward into the what we have been playing, and we're going to start with you, George. Now, look, I always love to see people that gush about games, but you, sir, you've been on an odyssey, I feel, over the last 5 days of love towards this game. So I want to hear about it. And of course, we'll hear other stuff about other games. But let's start with this one, this Dragon Ball Z Kakarot. Am I saying it correctly?
Yep, you said it perfectly. Yeah, it's Dragon Ball Z Kakarot. It basically follows the entire story of Dragon Ball Z. I don't know why they called it Kakarot, because he's he dies a lot during the series, so you end up playing a bunch of other characters anyways. So it's weird, but yeah, I mean, I loved it. I did note like right away when I started it. I think the first thing I said in chat was like, this game is not gonna be reviewed very well because it really is meant for the fans. If you're casual Dragon Ball watcher, or like you're kind of like, what is this? You probably won't make it very far in it. They start the whole game off, which I thought was dumb choice. I get why they did it, but anyways, they started off with like a follow quest with your bratty little son can only walk, and of course you can move at the speed of light, and it's like go to this point, and it's like I run over there, and it's like, oh, you forgot Gohan 6 miles back, and I'm like, crap, I gotta go back and get him, and he's gotta walk his ass over here for me to like start the next mission. So that was a poor start. Luckily, there's no more of that in the rest of the game, and it kind of just follows the storyline, and that was just more of a plot to show like, oh, look how worthless he is now, and how crazy of a bad dude, like, or a good guy, I should say, he becomes later on, how he grows. But yeah, interesting game development.
So hang on a second. Are you telling me this is not a walking sim with your monkey son? Is that what you're saying?
The first 5 minutes are, and then the next 39 and a half hours are not.
I tell you what, I spent more than 5 minutes in that section. That was lovely, Mindy. I thought I was playing it and I was thinking of you at the time. I thought this is a wonderful walking sim and a bit of fishing as well. It was lovely. But, look.
I'm sorry, a walking sim with a monkey son and you thought of me?
Yes, well, he's got a tail. I don't know why. Maybe George can explain. Obviously, anyone that knows Dragon Balls would know that, I suppose. But
what does this say about what you think of me?
No, well, look, it's a walking sim. I know that you enjoy them. I enjoyed it. It looks very beautiful as well. Look, I'm not going to dig myself out of this hole, although I will ask, why does he use his tail for fishing? Now, I understand this is a throwback or something, is it?
Yeah. It was a very I mean, it's a feature that I didn't ask for, but yeah, in the original Dragon Ball, he used to fish with his tail. Of course, Dragon Ball was just a weird kind of show in itself, and he was also like 3 feet tall. So to see him have a 8 foot long tail that he fashions onto himself in a prosthetic fashion and fish with that, I don't know what to say about that.
No, look, to be honest, I didn't realize it was his tail. I thought it was something else until you mentioned that in the chat. So, it was a little disappointing, but, it is what it is. We move on. Now, what I want to ask then is, so these games are notoriously grindy games, these fighting Dragon Ball games. Is this one? It doesn't seem to be if you did it in 5 days, but I don't know.
Yeah, honestly, it was a lot shorter than a lot of us thought it was going to be. The last one I did, the early one I did was Fighter Z, which is just a massive grind and takes forever. But this one actually went pretty quick. I mean, you just kind of burn through the story, you get strong pretty regularly, and the fights aren't that hard because they give you items that you can use mid-battle. So, like, you start losing for whatever reason, you can just heal yourself right back up and keep fighting in the middle of a fight. So it really wasn't that hard of a plat. And yeah, like my time shows, I think 5 days. I think the original Cheever got it in like 24 to 48 hours. So I mean, it's very doable. And if you're interested in the series and want to get back into it, it's a good way to step in.
Okay, and I'll just before we move on from this, just because at time of recording, I believe there's still no trophy guides, although I understand there's one on the way. Just for our listeners, because I know some of them are playing it, are there any missable trophies or things they should be watching out for, or are they good to just go for it?
As far as that game, there wasn't anything missable per se. I know a lot of us were worried about collecting medals and things like that it has, because one of the trophies like collect 100 medals and get all these super attacks. But like honestly, you could probably play through the entire game and get that stuff at the end. There's not a chapter select per se, but there's time travel, so you can go back and get different story stuff that you missed. But none of that is really missable now.
Oh, good. Good, excellent. Okay, now sorry to railroad you into that one, but I know that you were trying to finish that before today, and look, you did it easily. So I'm glad we could give that some love. Now, and as I said, George, I'm glad you finished it because otherwise I would have had to have by today. So the fact that you did it really eased it for me there. So what should we go to next? You tell us. What would you like to talk about here? 4 games.
Before we get into the inevitable Star Ocean, I mean, I think you see Neptunia PP in there. Like if you know me, I'm a big fan of the Neptunia games. However, this one I cannot recommend. It is a.
Oh, I'm so glad you brought that up because I bought that game literally I believe the week I bought my Vita, and I bought my Vita on launch day.
You bought the producer
I bought it really soon. The Neptunia PP.
Oh my goodness, I'm sorry.
And because it's not an RPG, right? It plays a little more like a dating sim, right? Where you you pick one girl. This sounds so wrong, but you pick one girl to kind of follow through the game and
Yeah.
like raise her talent level and stuff.
I mean, the whole series is kind of a that like waifu, like you pick your little wifey kind of thing, and so there's all those like typical anime elements to it. But yeah, you're basically, for whatever story reason that they come up with, you're the idols or the goddesses have to be, I guess, Japanese idols that sing and dance on stage, and so you're their producer and you're helping them, do better on stage so that they can save the world or whatever. It's a very loose storyline, but yeah. So this one is just I normally like the humor and I normally like to like kind of sit through it, but this one got very repetitive and you end up just doing the same thing over and over and over and over again. And some like you get these success states that prevent you from getting the trophies, which I'm dealing with now. So that's why that one's not finished. But otherwise, it should be very easy. But it's just kind of tedious and boring.
Yeah, do you see the irony in this?
Hmm.
That you're complaining that it's tedious and boring and repetitive and
Let me put this. There's no fighting in this one, so I can't put up with the tedium.
Mindy, I was just thinking, like, I better adjust my expectations here for later in the episode because, I was going to bitch about a 25-minute game. But, I mean, it really seems petty, doesn't it, in current company? But, yeah, you're a big NEP fan. In fact, George, I heard the abbreviation here, or the acronym NNP, NEP Pro, which has been attributed to you. Now, look, I know a little bit about these games, but not a lot. Does the NEP, it's just Neptunia? Like there's no secret meaning in this Nep, is there? It's just
that's just like a nickname that they call her. That's all.
Okay.
Once again, it's just like an anime game. It's just a goofy, happy fun with a lot of fourth wall breaking, and it's generally a good time if you play the RPGs.
Yeah, and because look, you're one of the few people in the world that plays this series. I have to ask you, so there was last year was the first, now was it a 2.5D or a straight 2D platformer NEP game? I think the first time they've embraced that style. How did you
Yeah,
find that?
I enjoyed it. It was very quick. I think I kind of digested that one pretty fast as well. I think it was like 4 or 5 days. But yeah, I mean,
Mm,
most of these that aren't like the numbered games are like they're kind of spin-offs, and which that one is. It doesn't tie into the main story; just kind of has elements from it.
mm,
But yeah, it was interesting. The art style was great in it. The story's kind of haphazard and crazy, but overall, I had fun with it.
I think Mindy's
I think it was
interested
a
in that. The Super Neptunia RPG, is that correct? Yeah.
yes, yeah, yeah.
Perfect. Okay, I'll let you continue. Sorry.
And then kind of just going through some others on my list here. I played Bulletstorm, which I will
Mm,
say, if you're into rare, like ultra rare trophies, kind of like I am, this is happens to be like the easiest ultra rare like out there that I can think of. Which now after announcing that, I'm sure it won't be, but there's one trophy because Chernobyl Ninja Dylan messaged me a few months back saying, hey, he had to do this game, and I helped him with the multiplayer portion of it, which is the hardest one. It's like these two trophies that are you have to kind of coordinate to do. But honestly, after that, running the hard mode and doing everything else, and I probably got like 10 ultra rares out of it, and I was like, wow, for this kind of game, I mean, that's pretty good. The game itself is it depends on your tastes, I suppose. It's very teenager, juvenile humor to it. Just a lot of blowing stuff up, and bros, and that kind of thing.
yeah, interesting. I've heard a few people play that, so that's good. That's good.
And the other one I'll mention is Far Cry 4. I've never played a Far Cry game before. This was my first.
that's a good.
Obviously,
Uh, I would have started with 3, but that's a good one too.
yeah, I enjoyed it as far as the shooter aspect. It was you kind a lot of these open world games, and we'll probably get into it later whenever we talk about these long games. But like, you kind of just start forgetting what the actual story is,
Mhm.
and you're just like, oh, I gotta collect another freaking 10 masks or whatever. It's like, why am I doing this again? It doesn't matter. I need a trophy. It's kind of how I found myself in this one because I was this one was kind of spread out. I was trying to do other things while doing this, and so I kind of lost track of where the story was going. I enjoyed the villain, like he was a pretty cool character, and then you kind of only interact, you don't interact with him as much as you do like Handsome Jack. Like he was a very similar villain, like that kind of charismatic like jerk, but you hate how you love him kind of thing. Um,
Mm.
But yeah, I mean, it was an enjoyable game. I'll probably play a few others in the series, but yeah, I enjoyed it.
You should play. You should play 3.
Yeah, I'm probably gonna do that one next because I heard 5 was it was okay, not as good as the others.
5 is if you think that if you're quick to lose track of the main story, in Far Cry 4, Ubisoft, it just got kind of worse. They
Mhm.
just started packing the open world with more stuff, like we talked about on the podcast before with
Yeah,
excuse me, with Assassin's Creed Odyssey, how it's just so full of stuff. You can easily go on like a 4-hour side quest tangent and realize it has absolutely nothing to do with the actual
yeah.
story, like the main narrative of the game. Far Cry 5 isn't that bad, but it's definitely more, at least as far as I recall, more like that than 4 and 3.
Yeah, and I felt the same way about I played Origins. I haven't played Odyssey yet, but Origins I was like, this is beautiful, like this is fun, it's different from the last ones. What's the story again? Like it doesn't matter. Like, it's kind of where I was at with it.
It's hard. I still think they haven't latched on to the correct formula yet. I think somehow the story almost needs to be separated from the game, so that I'm
Mm.
just thinking, like, I don't want to sidetrack here, but with the Final Fantasy 12, like it was possible to do a lot of that game before you did the last 50% of the story, and I think that's nice. I think that's maybe a balance they need to find. But look, George, I'm very impressed with your trophy card. It's very, it's some very solid games there. But as I do, I like to scroll down a bit, because I know there's this thing with some hunters, they like to hide the garbage, under the sheets. And then I see this: Super Destronaut, 36 fragments, Super Boxland, Daggerhood, Inksplosion, Lara Croft Go, 36 fragments. There's a lot of spam games in a row here. Well, you just wanted to dip your toes in the water with this, or?
So how I treat spam personally is usually it's just to fill in the gaps between my milestones. So all those I told everyone like, oh yeah, I'm gonna have Star Ocean, and I was like, well, I've spent like the last 6 months setting up this trophy. It needs to be in a milestone, and so like I got to about the end, and everyone's like, go ahead and pop it. I was like, all right, hold on, and I kind of ran through. I did about 10 spams, and I popped it at number 150 for myself as a
Hmm.
milestone. And that's kind of why I'm holding back on Star Ocean 3 as well right now.
We're not that different then, George. I just use my milestones to separate my spam. But it's really just the inverse of the same. That's good. That's good. Is there anything else there you'd like to throw out, or shall we move on to Mindy?
No, I'm good. Yeah, let's hear about Mindy.
Oh, okay. Well, it's not as impressive as you. I'm sorry, I was just scrolling through and I was looking at all of these time sync platinums you have. I'm like, golly,
Mm.
I do not have that kind of
Yeah,
time.
it's
Well, no, I do.
I
I
don't know
think
how I
right
do
now.
either.
But holy cow, it's kind of impressive.
Well, let's delve into that in the topic, perhaps, I think.
Okay, what have I been playing? Gosh, it's been so long. I think the last time I talked about Shalnor Legends, right?
Hmm.
Did I talk about Falcon Age?
No, I think that's
Okay.
where we're up to.
So I think that's probably where I stopped. So Falcon Age is a first person uh mm, let's call it action adventure slash walking sim. Not really a walking sim because there's combat, but there is a lot of kind of back and forth with light puzzle solving,
Mhm.
that kind of aspect of walking sims. And it's in the future on like a mining planet, and you play this girl with a falcon. And so this is built around the VR, but you do not need to have a VR to play this game. But the idea is that oh gosh, it's been so long. It's kind of a forgettable game actually. You're reclaiming these I don't think they're oil refineries. I think they were like metal refineries. Like you're reclaiming the planet from like this corp like evil corporation. It's not bad. It is a little forgettable, but it is a quick platinum and fairly easy. There's a couple of video guides out there to help you through it. But it's gorgeous. It is gorgeous, and the falcon's really cute, and you can like dress him up and stuff. It's cute.
It's sort of ironic that I see you did it there in like a tad under 6 hours. So Falcon Age doesn't take a Falcon Age. That's
I
good
see
to
what
know.
you did there.
I've been setting that up for a minute, listeners. I'm a little rusty after the break,
You
but
wrote
I'm
that
still
down
here.
last
Okay.
year, didn't you? Like way back in December,
look,
you wrote that one
It's in the
down. You're like,
notes.
I'm gonna sit on this until she talks about it.
It's all over the computer screen now. That and that milestone spam joke. That's all I got today, listeners. I'm sorry.
And then I played Spirit Hunter NG, which is the sequel to Deathmark. And I think Deathmark was better, but this one's still worth playing and reading for sure. But I do think Deathmark was better. And I think it was better paced too, honestly. This one I did start kind of skimming the text. About I think probably midway through I started skimming more because I was like, okay, I get the idea.
Yeah.
Let's come on, let's move. Moving on. That's the problem. I think that's the problem a lot of people have with visual novels is that there can be pacing issues. There really, really can be, and it comes down to your tolerance for that.
Can I ask? I thought I agree with you, Mindy, on that point. I thought one of the good things about Deathmark was that it was broken up into, I think, 5 cases, and there were very distinct parts of the story. So you could sort of, and almost bite-sized enough. You could play one and then have a rest or whatever. Is Spirit Hunter NG in the same sort of format, or is it just a more free-flowing story?
There are 5 distinct cases. The problem is, and it's been a while since I played Deathmark, so I can't remember. And I did text skip a lot of Deathmark. Like I did read, and then I had a timing issue, and I had to finish it for like an event or something. But I think there was an overall story, and there was also 5 distinct cases in Deathmark. The lines are blurred more in Spirit Hunter, where there's still 5 distinct cases, but they still, I think they tie in more to the overall story than in Deathmark, and that's where you hit your pacing issues because they're just restating a lot of stuff, and it's like, well, I just did this. Why are you telling me this? Why are you re-summarizing what I just went through? So that's unfortunate. Next up, and I kind of want to do a deep dive on this. I don't know if we will, but I did play Life is Strange 2. All 5 episodes came out, so I finally sat down and played it. I will say that I liked the first one better, but I think this one's still good, still worth playing. I don't think I liked it as much as CJ does.
Wow, hang on a second. You're backpedaling here. You told me you didn't like it at all as you were going through it.
I did have some major issues with this game. But time and holding back for potential deep dive episode. Overall, I do think it's worth playing. I think any game that tries something different narratively is worth playing. But you're right, CJ. I had problems with this game. I did. I don't outright hate this game, but this is a you game.
Yeah. Without, as you said, you don't want to go in too deep. So just on a surface level or whatever, the big thing about this game, as opposed to Before the Storm and the first one, is this one is moving much, much more towards an interactive movie as it goes on. Do you think it went too far? Was that one of your issues with it?
Yeah, definitely. That was definitely part of the issue. I think the other problem was it covers too much of a span of time, especially in an interactive movie. I think like the first, I was trying to remember and I couldn't quite remember, but the first game takes place over like a week, like no time at all. This one takes place over a couple of years. Well, there's a massive time interval. So let's be, but it still takes place over like a year or two until the like a late in the game when there's a bigger time jump. But the majority of the game takes place over a year or two. And I think that can be disorienting. And that's kind of it's a tricky thing to do because it is episodic. So I understand why they're, given the narrative, I understand why they did the time jumps. I don't disagree with the time jumps, but at the same time, because they are these compact 2-hour episode, well, let's say compact 2-hour episodes, you have to really hit a balance of getting to know the characters, and I'm not so sure they did to make me really invested enough to where I'm just, I'm totally on board and not questioning anything that happened in the time jump. You know what I mean? That everything they did after this chunk of time we didn't see feels natural. I'm not going to question it 100%.
Yeah, no, I understand. I think what they were, from reading some of the devs' comments, what they're actually trying to do was, replicate more of the release schedule as well. So obviously there were months, especially in the early episodes, months between them. So they reflected that in the game. So there was months of stuff, that happened to the characters. It's like they were almost living, the same timeline that we are, if you like, between the release dates.
Right. And honestly, if we do a deep dive, I actually think it would be interesting, but bottom line, honestly, I think this would have been a better game without the powers in it. I really, really do. I think it was just kind of too much. Like I understood the story they were trying to tell. I think it would have been better if they didn't have because Life is Strange. The first one she had the time travel powers, or the time not time travel, time rewinding powers. In this one, he's got telekinesis, and I feel like if that was just not there, like I feel like that it's an interesting, it could be an interesting enough story without it. And it was kind of my problem with Before the Storm too, where it felt kind of shoehorned in. Because the whole thing with Before the Storm is you didn't quite know if Rachel had powers, because they kind of sort of imply that she does. She's got pyrokinesis, which means she can set fires. They kind of imply that, but they don't outright say it. But they bring it up enough that it's almost distracting from the story they're telling. And I think this is just a larger form of that, where you have this hour and a half chunk of story, and all of a sudden, oh yeah, he needs to practice his telekinesis. I forgot he had that. Whereas it was the time rewind thing was a big part of the main plot of the first game.
It seems like they almost kind of screwed up the future game cycle by putting such a powerful power as time control. And then they're like, oh, well, this one, she's basically a match, and this one can, rather than have somebody else lift it for him, he does it with his mind. Like, it seems kind of weak comparatively.
Well, I think it could be interesting to kind of explore this with different powers, like pyrokinesis and whatnot. Maybe this was just the wrong story to tell with that specific power. Who knows if he could, if he could read minds or teleport or something. Maybe that would be different. I think the power combination with the story, I think, just really did not work for me.
Something like that I feel like is better fit for a game like Infamous, where it's an action-y type thing. If you're telling a drama narrative type thing, you really need a power that reflect, like, I feel like the time rewind thing is perfect for that. Yeah, and like you said, like a teleport, like the full Professor X gamut of powers would be good for another one. But just being able to lift stuff, I mean, it's a fun little side element, but it's really not great for the narrative.
Well, and it's also because I'm just remembering the first game, you could rewind time whenever the hell you wanted to.
Yeah.
Whereas in this one, it's like you can only telekinetically move what we tell you can at very specific points in the game.
Yeah. It's like, oh no, we're locked in this room and there's a key on the other side of the door. Time to use my power. Like that kind of thing.
If we let you. Sometimes you don't even get to do that. Oh. You have to solve a puzzle or something.
Wonderful.
Well, I mean, it all comes back to the reducing of the gameplay. But look, their next game looks interesting because it looks like it's moving more towards a detective game. And look, Mindi, you might be saved because it was shown on the Microsoft stage. And, if Microsoft, carry on their way, they'll probably buy them. And it'll be an exclusive, which, only means, well, who knows what that means? Maybe it just means until Sony plays nice. We have to wait and see. But good. What else?
I have a couple more. I made a promise on this podcast, and I'm a little disappointed in our listeners because only Slamma messaged me and said, hey, you promised to play this game. Have you done it yet? And I've done it. And it was Agent A Puzzle in Disguise. That game that I kept bringing up and saying every time I finish a game, I look at this and I was like, is it time to play this? And then I get sidetracked by something else. Definitely worth playing. It's a lot of fun. It's a point and click, but not kind of like the Artifacts Mindi stuff. It has more of a feel of a room escape thing, except you're shuttling between different rooms. But it's got that, it's a very kind of confined play area, so it does feel more like a room escape game. It's, if you like Archer, I think you'll dig this game aesthetically. It's got that really kind of 60s spy look. A lot of fun, easy platinum. There is a speedrun trophy. It's a weird thing. You can easily do this game in like all of the trophies under the speedrun time. The problem is that the timer does not stop when you pause the game. You actually have to go back to the main menu, and that stops the clock. It auto saves everywhere, so going back to the main menu effectively acts as pausing the game, but actually just kind of hitting the pause button does not actually pause the timer. So if you want to do everything in one go, just keep that in mind. Velvet, former guest, friend of the show, wrote a great text and picture walkthrough for it, and I think people should try it. And then 2 little fun ones. I was mad that Reddy brought it up first because I played Unicorn Princess earlier this month. But I listened to Reddy's. I'm mad I wasn't on that one because he mentioned like JJ Macfield, and I played that one, and we could have had a little conversation about that. And then I was literally in my car, literally listening to this podcast, and he goes, Unicorn Princess, and I went, son of a bitch! Just
To be fair, he hadn't played it. He'd played the other one. He was looking forward to playing this one.
Oh, he played the other one.
He played the 100% game, which was called the Riding.
Like My Riding Stable's Life or whatever.
Yes, yeah, which is not a plat game. That was the one that he played.
Oh, maybe that's why, because I did buy it because it was on sale recently for like $7.
Yes.
And I was like, I'm going to play this and I'm going to talk about it in the podcast. And then I didn't.
Sorry, My Little Riding Champion. That's the one that he played, yes.
Yeah, that's the one. Anyway, I played Unicorn Princess. It is the same developer. It sounds to me like it is kind of a reskin of the game, except there's a 24-hour trophy in riding My Little Pony Stable, whatever the hell it's called. There is no 24-hour trophy in Unicorn Princess. You can do this 100% in about 3 to 5 hours. It is hilarious. Unintentionally, do not spend more than $10 or a rental on this game. So good luck with that. And then the last thing, I did this most...
But they are very beautiful looking unicorn in that game.
It is. It's a shame you don't get to play with it very often.
Yes, that's always true.
They don't even let you, ride around the main world on the unicorn after you beat the game.
No. Yes, that's rough.
Oh, no. No. They don't let you. It is unintentionally hilarious, though.
The problem with this industry, this German horse racing industry, is that they're just all doing whatever they want, and they don't have a central body that's telling them how it should be, Mindi. And I don't understand why you're not reaching out to these people and saying, look, this is the future of your genre. You're well versed in it now. I mean, please, sorry.
It's a good segue, CJ, because I'm starting to embrace this moniker you've thrust upon me.
Well, look, if the horseshoe fits.
I'm building up my credentials because I also played Bibi and Tina Adventures with Horses.
Yes. It's lovely, isn't it?
So prior to that riding stables game that I didn't know existed, I thought I had played every German horse game after I played Bibi and Tina Unicorn Princess. But no. Denied. I now have to do another one and I have to leave it on my system for 24 hours and I'm kind of upset about that. But my favorite thing about this Bibi and Tina game is it shows a trailer for the actual movie. There's 4 of them, by the way. There's 4 Bibi and Tina movies.
Jeez.
But when you start the game up, or just when you launch the game, it just shows the trailer for the movie. And this movie looks so cheesy, like purposefully cheesy enough that it is my jam. And I brought this up in the chat, and there was a little viewing party, and I think 2 people in the chat actually watched it, and I thought that was hilarious. I did not, because I canceled my Netflix subscription. But I think I'm gonna hop on my parents' Netflix and create a separate account so they don't have to ask me any questions what the hell these movies are in their recommendation feed now.
Yes. So yeah, they'll be worried about the Bibi and Tina movie for sure.
Maybe I'm more worried about like those, since you enjoyed this, here are some other things you might enjoy. I'm more worried about that. But I was thinking, maybe if it gets some traction, we could have like a Push2Plat viewing party and just be like,
yeah.
Hey, let's all watch a Bibi and Tina movie.
How many platinums can you get during the Bibi and Tina movie?
Exactly.
How many Bibi and Tina platinums can you get? Yeah. Look, but you're right, Mindi. It's a delightful 2-hour collectible with a 13-minute story. So it's
that
wonderful.
is correct.
Yes. Perfect.
And that's it.
Oh, okay, excellent. Yeah, you have been busy, but as usual, there's a lot of PS4 there, and no PS3 listeners.
Okay, well, see, you brought it up. I wasn't gonna bring it up, but we're recording a couple of podcasts in the next couple of days, so I'm split. I played a hell of a lot more in the month that we were gone, and
a lot of Lego.
This is just the first.
Okay.
This is just the first chunk of what I've played.
Excellent.
But since you brought it up, CJ, I am being a little deceitful there, and I apologize, listeners.
That's all right. I just wondered if you'd readjusted your goals already to 2021 or not, but they're still active.
No.
That's good. That's good to see. So look, listeners, I have some tragic news. We had a bit of an issue with our recording service provider, if you like, because we record with guests, from around the world, as which we can't use just standard recording one-on-one on a system. We use a thing that uploads as we go, if you like. And I did a wonderful Final Fantasy 12 deep dive, approaching the 2-hour mark, I believe, with Mr. Zador, and unfortunately we lost that on the behalf of that particular provider. So that was a shame. But look, I'm hoping we will revisit that. So I won't talk about that game at all, other than to say thank you, Mr. Scottish Noob, for your message last night, reminding me that I have 8 days to finish it. But I can assure you, this last section, the vestry thing with the rare animals, it's taking longer than I expected, but still firmly within the 8-day time limit.
So close! Wow.
you know what, George?
Wait. When was this? Was this today?
Last night he sent me the message. Yes. Yeah.
Oh man, so you're telling me that I missed my day that I could spam you with pictures from the ring? Just her going 7 days.
Oh,
I'm so upset right now.
I like it.
Podcast over. I can't.
You know what, George, though? Someone sent me a message, a week ago or something else, and they said, CJ, you have to get the platinum now. You were so close. You only have one thing to go. And I'm like, yeah, that one trophy is going to take a lot longer than you think.
Yeah. If you play JRPGs, one trophy could take 200 hours.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, with the RNG and things. But anyway, look, we'll hopefully get to some sort of a deep dive, because Zador is a master of that game across the PS2 and PS4 variation. So we shall see. So look, all that I will throw out is this Super Street the game, and mainly because it's not a new game. It came out 2 years ago, but when I first played it was kind of difficult game. The steering was very, very heavy, and the AI was tough. The time trials were tough. I haven't been back to it, as I said, for 2 years or whatever. I dropped in the other day, and they've put in a patch where the handling is way more improved. If anything, it's almost a little floaty now. So if you like your arcade drifty arcadey drift racing style games, you're gonna enjoy this. They've also put in an easy, medium, hard, and ultra hard difficulty level. So if you choose the easy or the medium now, it's much more manageable than it was before. On easy, I would call this a spam plat, probably of around 6 to 8 hours. If you do it, you do need to be careful, because there are a couple of online trophies. The one that's challenging, of course, is the 4-player trophy. Not because it's difficult, just need 4 people in the lobby, and you just all need them to agree to do the next race. So to push, I think it's the square button. It's a very easy trophy to get, but you would need 4 people. And Mindi, this is easy if you're doing the EU and NA stack, but in my excitement, I thought I'm going to do the Japanese stack, of which there are 5 owners, all of which do not speak English, and it's going to prove difficult to find 4 people there. But then, look, if you're interested in stacking that game, and you do the Asian version, listeners, please reach out to me and let me know. But, other than that, maybe I'll just throw like a really brief bit about the AI Somnium Files. I know this game is coming up on your list as well, Mindi, I'm sure in the near future.
Yes, please.
Yeah, look, it's good. It's well, I mean, it is a VN of sorts, I suppose. It's all fully voiced as well, which is fantastic. So you don't have to read it. It will read it to you, I suppose, if you like. The humor is fantastically Japanese. There is so much innuendo in this game. There's some fan service. George mentioned earlier about idols in games. Obviously, this is, you've got your Japanese, idols as well, teenage idols, dancing and singing. So it's all tied up in this. The case is fantastic, without spoiling it, because it happens at the very beginning. You find a body with an ice pick jammed through the eye, and there, it goes from there. One of the fantastic things about this game is so it plays like a VN where you can move around the environment in certain sections, and you can, like a point and click, I suppose. You can click all the different objects in the room. Some will provoke a dialogue scene, some will not. It does funnel you, though, to your direction. So don't think that you need a guide for this game. To play it initially, perhaps for cleanup, but not initially. The puzzles sort of funnel you into it, and then they move. The Somnium is obviously a dream state, if you're like a machine. So at the end of each day or chapter, you enter a Somnium state through a link, and that's where you get to make some choices. And it's those choices that push the story in one of 2 ways. There are 2 sort of different parallel stories running at the same time. So if you're considering this as a plat game, I don't think it's really worth using a guide the first playthrough, because you will have to come back anyway and follow the other path. Unlike many VNs, though, when you start on the right path or the left path, you will maintain that path throughout. So it's not as complicated as you're switching between paths. So it is, even though I know the guide that's up at the moment looks very confusing, it's actually a lot easier to use, because you can jump back and follow the different path when you finish. There's no hard cutoff on that. So look, I think that's enough about that game. There is potential for frustration in the Somnium scene. So if you don't do well with time limits, each of the Somniums you have 6 minutes to solve the puzzles. The time is a bit tight as you go on if you don't know what you're doing, but you can keep replaying that 6-minute cycle if you can't figure it out, or I suppose you could cheat. But look, it's good. I want to play a little bit more before I say it's a great VN, but it's definitely holding my interest, Mindi, and I think you will do well to play it as well. I'm sure you will enjoy it. So that's enough, listeners. That's enough. We'll cover some more in the spam, but why don't we go across to some new releases? They're finally starting to drop. It's starting to happen. Now, who wants to go first? George, would you like to throw something out?
Sure. We were looking through this list, and I stumbled upon this Throw Anything, a PSVR game. And let me read the description. Get secret missions from Secret Delivery Agency, SDA, and save the world from zombie horde. Save the world from zombie horde in the VR action game Throw Anything. There is nowhere to run and nowhere to hide as zombies climb up the walls, hoping to satisfy their appetite for brains. Face off against starving zombies in high-rise buildings across the globe. So, from my understanding of reading this is a VR game where things are coming at you in all directions and you're to throw things at them. So I can just see a lot of broken TVs, broken hands, just a couple heart attacks happening. It just seems like a great time.
It does. It's impressive how many times they got the word zombie into that write-up as well.
Yeah, they put it in there.
I like it, yeah. And Mindi, would you like to throw one out?
Yeah. Didn't know this existed until today. Called Bookbound Brigade. What if all the protagonists of books lost their memory? Venture into their world and beat the hell out of historical and literary characters you studied in school. Bookbound Brigade is a new take on the established Metroidvania genre. Oh, George, Metroidvania! Do you like Metroidvanias?
I tolerate them.
All right.
So do I. Each week, George. Each week. It's unbelievable.
Hey, we covered it. We're good.
Established Metroidvania genre where you get to lead a colorful bunch of real and fictional heroes. Keeping an eye on this one. Don't know probably not a day one, but keeping an eye on it.
Excellent. Look, both of those games sound fantastic. But listeners, I'm pleased to inform you we're well into the year now. We have our first AAA game dropping here that I know I'm excited about, and I'm sure you're excited about. By the Master.
I know the joke.
This is not a joke. This man is a one-man machine. This is his third major game now on the PlayStation. Nothing can stop this man. Gilson B. Pontes, of course, we are talking about, and this is his newest title, Shadow the Ronin, The Revenge to the Samurai. So he says here about this game, Dokken Gakuruku, a legendary samurai of ancient capital Imperial, was deprived and expelled from their lands, and all your family killed by the orders of the Empire. After these events, he swore vengeance against his opponents until death. Thus begins a long and bloody battle into the Edo period. So if that didn't make any sense to you, don't panic. His stories are always complex and or maybe convoluted. If you're thinking, I know that name, but I can't place it, you may have been thinking of other great titles like Samuel, The Legacy of Ophicus as well. So look, this is something to look out for. And if you do pick this game up, it will be expensive. You know, you have to come to expect that of this man. But he is a master of lighting. In his last game, he chose not to use any, which is profound in an open world game. So I don't know what's going to happen in this one, but go in knowing that you're in for an experience of sorts.
You're awful. And I was wrong too. I thought you were going to make a joke about it came from space and ate our brains, which is just already title of the year 2020 contender for me.
Did you have another one, Minty?
I do, and I have been waiting 7 years to play this game, and it's Kentucky Route Zero. It's finally coming out. I think the trophy list for this dropped like 2 years ago on PSN, and it's finally coming out now. But this is a episodic point-and-click adventure game that originally started in 2013, which is when I heard about it. Which is when people I knew were playing it and saying it was amazing. And I said, I will wait until it's done, thinking that would be 6 months and not 6 years. It's this kind of interesting combination of, I think someone described it as kind of like Twin Peaks, but with magic. Like, it's got that weird kind of eerie, unsettling but not scary vibe that Twin Peaks has going on. There's magical realism in it, and bluegrass, like almost the entire score is bluegrass. It's finally come out, so I'm gonna play it, and I'm excited. So I will definitely talk about that at some point in the upcoming weeks, for sure.
Fantastic. Yeah, that has a very good reputation coming across from the PC.
Yes.
So that is fantastic to see. And we've also got Disco Elysium is coming at some point this year from the PC as well.
Yeah.
So it's good to see some big games coming across. Excellent. Does anyone else have anything else, or are you just floored by Pontes' new game here and want to move on?
I think George had one more.
Well, yeah, I mentioned it earlier. I was just looking at this one out of sheer madness, but where is it? It was Sisters Royale. I just figured I'd drop in a crazy weeb game. So this one is the first new game in 12 years from Alpha System, the team that brought you the shoot-'em-up Castle of Shikigami 3 and the Castle of Shikigami series. 5 uniquely talented sisters are squabbling over which of them will marry the angel Yashin. Enjoy the heroic strategies of all 5. So it's just another good wifey game there, marriage simulator to anime characters.
Oh no, honey. No, honey. If it's the Castle of Shikigami people, it's a bullet hell.
Oh, wonderful, even better.
Oh, is it? Oh, that is interesting then.
Let me check that, because Castle of Shikigami is a bullet hell.
It does say shoot 'em up on it, and so yeah, maybe so. Maybe it's a shoot 'em up with light wifey elements.
No, this is definitely a bullet hell game.
Perfect.
Which why I was a little surprised, because you did mention this in the pre-show chat, which is why I was surprised that you were interested in this.
Yeah.
Because I was like, this is not your genre. I mean, fair due to you, but this is not your genre.
Oh, I think that's a bit hard to say. George tolerates Japanese bullshit better than anyone.
Yeah,
I think this
exactly.
is well within his category.
Honestly, if it's a damn near impossible platinum that takes forever, it probably is right up my alley.
It is indeed. Look, and listeners, before we shuffle across to the topic, this could be your last chance to play Obsidian game on our beloved system, Pillars of Eternity 2 Deadfire, so the Ultimate Edition from game coming out in 2018. It looks like it's wrapped with everything, all the DLC. And look, I don't know if these top-down sort of RPGs interest you or not, George, but this is a fantastic series, but exceptionally long, unfortunately, this game. So I
Hmm.
don't know. I like the idea of this,
I'm
but
not
I
really
just think
crazy
it's
about top
probably never
down,
going
but
to happen.
well, depends on the gameplay, I guess.
Yeah, fair enough. Each their own. But look, it provides a perfect segue
Hmm.
into our topic today, listeners. And we're going to move into 100 hours and beyond. So look, it's an area that, very few rat games have hit, my understanding is. So it's not an area that I'm well familiar in. But it exists, these games, I'm told. And we're gonna take a specific look here at Star Ocean games, because we do have a master of this particular genre. So to get us started off, George, tell me what you love about this franchise, these games.
Well, a lot of it is biased because, as I mentioned before, I grew up with these games, and Star Ocean 2 is my first departure into the series. But just to, if you're unfamiliar with them as a whole, they're basically it's sci-fi and high fantasy elements mixed together in a active battle RPG system. Um, as well, they have private actions and branching storylines to produce multiple endings. So there's really a lot of everything that you can think of in RPGs and modern day RPGs that really kind of I won't say started. I'm sure there was some other instances before this, but this was like the biggest to actually start doing those kind of things. But yeah, the developers um, derive a lot of their inspiration from Star Trek, so you kind of get that quite a bit. Is it's just a lot of we're going to travel across the stars and solve a mission, and oh no, we crash on this planet, and now we have to fight with swords and spears until we go away and have to save the universe again, kind of thing. So it usually jumps around quite a bit, but the stories are always very interesting. And the gameplay is once again your typical Japanese RPG. They can take a long time. Now, with that said, I know that a lot of people are turned off by, especially the one that we'll probably talk the most about, Star Ocean 4, and that it is probably a good at least 300 hour platinum if you're streamlining everything. But the story itself,
Mm.
if you just want to dip in and check out the story and play a good RPG, I mean, you could probably get through it in 40 to 60 hours without
Mm.
too much stress and strain. It's all the extra stuff that adds on that extra time.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. Well, before we get into that one, I think you're right. That one is very well known for perhaps the wrong reasons. The link there, but you touched on a few
Hmm.
things. So I did a little reading this morning about this series, and it's a massive. I mean, these games are massive in what they have now. You basically you mentioned quickly there about the battle system. So it's a real time battle system, isn't it? This isn't turn based. These games.
No, so this was like one of the first, one of the big pioneers of the real-time battle system, and you would think those games, most of us, if you're into RPGs, think of them coming around PlayStation, really PlayStation 2 era, but really this came out Super Nintendo,
Mm.
is what happened when these came out with the real-time battle engine. And just to give a quick backstory with the first Star Ocean game. Like I said, it came out towards the end of the Super Nintendo life cycle.
Mm.
The team that was developing Tales of Fantasia had a squabble and split and formed Tri-Ace, which is the developer of all the Star Ocean games. And so Tales of Fantasia and Star Ocean have very similar elements to them because it's the same teams that work together. But yeah, they used up basically every bit of RAM that the Super Nintendo had to put out, and it was so late in the cycle that it really didn't get a chance to make it over to America. And it wasn't until 2 years later that we got Star Ocean 2 on PlayStation 1, and that's when it was introduced to us in the West. But yeah, the idea of a real-time battle, which was kind of strange in that Final Fantasy era
Mm.
of turn-based type fighting, as well as the private action sequence. So you could get clips or get a little more tidbits of the characters by doing these private actions before you enter a town. And you can go talk to a specific character and get a little bit more backstory, as well as form a little bit more of a relationship with them. And with that, if you were good enough friends, or in some cases, there's some romanceable characters as well. After the ending, you would have a secret ending with you and those characters, or if those characters, two different characters fell in love with each other, due to actions, you would see that. So it wouldn't just be the main character. So it was a lot of branching, and you really think it's before its time. Because you think of like Persona now. I mean, that's what that game is all about.
Yeah.
Is those extra little storylines.
That's what I found interesting reading about this, because look, I'm going to be honest here. Like, I've never played any of these games. I have one of them. I think it's 5. It's the one after the massive one that I dabbled in really briefly, but not enough not to know. But I did know someone at some point that was like you. He really loved these games. He'd done 4. In fact, he's actually stacked 4, I think, now as well. He really loves these games. And I asked him once. I said, like, is it the story? Is it just like amazing? Would I? Because I'm obviously not going to go for the plat, but would I get engaged in the story? And he said, well, it's okay. Is that sort of fair? Is it just okay, or?
Each of the stories are very different. I mean, some of them are better than others, of course, and it's not anything that's crazy gonna blow your minds type stories, but they are engaging. I do
Okay.
4 was one of the better story. Well, I mean, I really can't say that. They all have their own engaging storylines. That it just depends on what you're into. The big nemesis of the series right now is Star Ocean 3, which is the one I'm staging the plat for milestone right now. But the story, I remember playing this originally on PS2, getting to the twist ending and be like, really? And I kind of think that's everyone's consensus on this game is like, oh, it's got a stupid story. Well, in replaying it now, like, I'm a little bit older and able to like soak it in. Like the story itself is amazing. The twist, not so much. It's kind of like, okay, think Indiana Jones, the last Indiana Jones movie. You're like, oh, okay, what's going on here? And it's like, oh, this is dumb. But the gameplay itself, the story leading up to that point itself was great. And if you're willing to move past that, it's a pretty good game. It's definitely still has its flaws, but yeah, the stories aren't, they won't blow you out of the water, but they're good.
So then I have a question, Drick,
Hmm.
because you've played most, if not all of them.
Yes.
Just purely for story, regardless of trophies, purely for
Hmm.
story. If you are a newcomer to the series, what should you play first to get you into the series? And purely for trophies, with the secondary goal of getting into the series, which game should you play first?
Well, purely for story, I enjoy the longest one. So I mean, keep in mind you'll have a 600-hour platinum that you may never complete. But chronologically, Star Ocean 4 is the first in the series. So it's the genesis of them being on Earth, saying, "Hey, Earth is dying. We need to go to space and recolonize somewhere else," and then going through the trials of figuring out what it means to be like this advanced species spreading itself throughout the stars, and what that means, and kind of sets the stage for the rest of the games, that have they come up with this rule that you're used to from previous games of like, hey, you don't interfere with the society, an underdeveloped society, because you can just, wreck their evolution with with your ideals, and they were going to grow a certain way, and now you kind of change that. So it kind of sets the stage for that, and it's a very interesting way of telling that.
But do you think that's truly necessary? Because for things like uh like um uh say Parks and Recreation,
Hmm.
like the first season really isn't that good. It really isn't, and it can turn you off because it's so different from
Hmm.
the rest of the show.
Well, and
So
this is the
you
4th game in the series.
if I tell people to watch Parks and Rec, I say read a summary of the first season and then start on the second season. So
Yeah, it's the same. The
do you
same goes
really
for The
think that?
Office as well. Yeah.
Yeah. So do you really think that Star Ocean 4 is the one to start with if you want to get into this, if you want to hook someone? Not necessarily chronologically, because obviously that's not the first one that came out.
Mhm.
But if you really want to, if you want to pick one game to be like, if you don't like this, you're not going to like the rest of the series.
Well,
You think that's the one to start with?
honestly, they're all released on different consoles, so they're all kind of vastly different as how they approach the player. Like 1 and 2 are basically the same. I mean, 2 you can't get unless it's in Japanese, and I'm hoping that they do a remake or something. So I mean, that's pretty much off the table. One is the one that just came out, and it's the first game that they released, so it's fun, it's good, but it still has a few raw elements to where it's kind of hard, on the base level. So a lot of people won't make it very far in it. I feel. I think
Hmm.
Star Ocean 4 is where it came out on PS3. They ported it to and remastered it for PS4, so it looks great. You can play it on the easiest mode and still get trophies on the easiest mode, and go through the story and follow it, and still do the post game and have a good time and get a feel of what the series is. Um,
Hmm.
I, a lot of people did not like five. I honestly can't remember playing five. I feel like I just kind of went through it. And three is just notorious for a lot of issues. So I really think four is where you need to start.
A lot of like story issues, trophy issues. What?
Um, Trophy issues, yes. Story issues, yes. And gameplay, yes. So there's a lot of
Trifecta.
there's a lot to be repaired in it. It does a lot of stuff good, but that's me looking through rose-colored glasses as a fan. It's a vast departure from the rest of the series and how it does things.
Hmm. And then I've interrupted my own question. So that's the story one. What
hmm
about if it's purely for trophies with the secondary aim of maybe getting into the series? What do
Uh,
you think people should go for,
if
and
you
why?
speak Japanese, I'd say Star Ocean 2 because that's honestly like it's the most fun. It's quick. It's pretty easy.
Like relatively quick to Star Ocean, or like
Oh yeah, yeah. The first two you can do them in less than 30 hours,
oh
probably. Yeah, because they're basically like 24-bit. You think like Chrono Trigger, Final Fantasy 6, like those type of games. So
mm,
they weren't huge when they came out, so they're not unnecessarily long. And even the trophies support added on the end is really just, oh yeah, beat the secret boss at the ending. Okay, well, and you can do that pretty quickly. You're probably gonna do that anyways. There's one or two kind of like ending related trophies. But other than that, I mean, it's fairly simple. So either the first or second one, Star Ocean First Departure, Star Ocean Second Story, are like the softball entry into the series to kind of get idea of the world.
okay. I was just curious because
hmm
we asked Eigen, I asked Eigen something similar when she was on. I tend to like to ask that of people who have played entire series and
Yeah.
see how the answers differ.
Now, the big draw really for the series. I mean, if you just like RPG stuff, the games are great. I mean, it's like all right, you fight through the story. It's got it's mostly engaging story. You can customize your characters with gear. You've got item creation, so you can almost like break the game at points. But towards the post game, you almost need to break the game to get really good. And then you've got some challenging like end game bosses and all these extra dungeons, and so it keeps you like into it. So like you got to picture me in 1998, a kid that just had this one game. It's like it gave me tons to do, like to play it over and over and over again, and spend enough time on it to where it's a little bit different today where we have I've got literally a backlog of 300 different games I need to go through. But for that aspect of it's honestly a
Mm.
really good time.
The more I read and the more I hear you talk about this game, it is very progressive for its time. And as you've alluded to already, it's setting, maybe setting the tone for many of these JRPGs that follow, particularly thinking the Persona series, but even spin-offs in the rhythm genre. And this comes from this private action, the social system. So from my understanding, and I'd
hmm
like you to talk about this a bit, this isn't just a superficial like social system. This can actually have effects on the story itself, leading to, if I read correctly, like a lot of different endings. Is that correct? Or
So the story itself is locked in. Like you're not going to get different dialogue options in the main story. Like that is set. It's you go through
okay.
what it is. It's really just these kind of side stories that you develop and figure out uh, different characters' personalities and backstories and things like that. And where it all ties in is the endings. If you just played without doing any private actions and just went through the game, each character would have their own solo ending, showing where they are now, kind of thing. If you did the private actions throughout the game, then it would be like, oh, you got really close with this character, so now main character and that character are best friends, and they're out hunting, together still,
Hmm.
or this character and that character fell in love, so now they're married, they have kids, they're doing this. So It's changed quite a bit throughout the course of the series. The first two games, it was very deliberate. You got outside a city, there was a button that said private action, and you went in there and you found um, your little movie, and you made a decision on how you're going to react, and then it tallied it up at the end, and it gave you an ending. Three, it's much different. It's not so much focused on the private action, which is another kind of drawback of three. Four, it's not based on the cities. It's you travel between planets. There's a lot more space travel in number four, to where it's like, okay, we're gonna go to this planet. We're gonna be in warp speed for 4 hours, and each hour is a chance to interact with the character and make a choice, and so on and so forth. Or you could just skip it all together and go straight to the planet and just ignore all that. And
Hmm.
I think five kind of went back to the more traditional, like, all right, you're outside the town. Are you sure is this something you want to do? Because you may not be able to make it to if you're just coming into town to use the inn or go to the store, you may not be able to because you're going to be doing the scene. So you have to choose to do these actions.
Imagine with this, it leads to potentially a lot of different variations in the ending. Does this follow the usual Japanese trope here? And I'm thinking like of Nier Automata, where it had, I think, 26 or something endings, which is a lot less than these games. But half of those endings are just basically text based. Is that how these endings are then, or these once you say it's tallied up the points and things, is it just sort of like a wall of text you read that is the ending, or
No, it's usually a little movie that's associated with these characters and where they are now after the end game.
okay?
So it actually does it pretty well, and it doesn't phone it in. It's like, okay, what would it be like if this character and that character actually, he's from that planet and she's from this planet. What would it be like if they hung out after the end of this, when the bad guy's gone? Like, what would they do? And so it actually does a good job of kind of like, playing that out.
Yeah. Okay, I understand. So, what we might do, because that gives us a pretty good overview of the games as a whole, but we might focus on four now, if that's okay with you.
Hmm.
Just because that is the big one, and we're going to use it as sort of a vehicle to maybe look at a question that very much interests me in games that are over 100 hours, particularly games with missable trophies, of which this has, I can
Yes.
see 15. How so you obviously going in what the missables are going to be, I imagine. How do you sort of do you plan for it? What do you do? Like, what's your pre-game for a game like this, or a game of these sort of links?
Um, well, specifically these games or just RPGs in general. If I know there's going to be a lot of missables, I will do the research and figure out, where, and I'll look for, because over the course of hours and hours, you kind of lose track of like, oh, who am I supposed to talk to, kind of thing, or who am I not supposed to talk to? So I'll kind of just make a note as I'm reading through it. So it'll usually say in a guide, um, before you talk to Jim over here, and after this happens, make sure you go talk to this guy. And so I'll just make a mental note, be like, all right, whenever I see this, like that's when I need to stop what I'm doing, slow my roll, and read this guide again and figure out if I'm about to miss something. For something like Star Ocean, you're going to be playing through it probably 5 times, 6 times, 4 times. Minimum is four. So it's up to you if you want to do that. I know it'll be a lot less painful if you do it on your first playthrough. Um, I think for me, I ended up playing it like 5 or 6 times, because I played the game once, 10 years ago. Was like, oh, I'm not crazy enough to do all these trophies, and then came back later, and I'm like, hey, I'm crazy enough now. And went through and then did it again. But yeah, specifically if we're talking Star Ocean 4, there's they introduced a battle trophy system, which is trophies within trophies, which is fun.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, they did it the preferable way they did it. The best thing about Star Ocean 3 is 80% is all you needed to get all the trophies associated with battle trophies. Star Ocean 4 said you need to get all of them. There are 900 of them, and
Mm.
probably about 20 of them are RNG, or probably a little bit more than that.
Sorry, so battle trophies, sorry, are like challenges to do during the kind of level up grindy
Yes,
battles.
so mid battle, like these are little gates that you can meet to trigger these battle trophies, and they range from as simple as kill 100 enemies to uh, be in battle for 4 hours, jump 10,000 times, like silly things. So it's all over the
Oh, so
place.
they're just straight up in-game achievements that are not tied to the trophy system, at least in that way.
Yeah, you have to. The trophies themselves are like get 25%, 50%, 75%, 100% of the battle trophies. So yes, the in-game battle trophies. There's like I said, there's 900 of them, and you have to get all 900 if you want to get the platinum.
Sounds fun.
Yeah,
Not
yeah.
my cup of tea, not gonna lie. I'm bewildered that you've done all of these. I mean, obviously there's a clear enjoyment in it. Is it the game? No, and I'm not being sarcastic. Like, is it the gameplay loop? Is it just that sheer love of the story that drives you to want to get all the platinums?
It's
What is it?
it's the sum of many things to do it really. If you look, because I started looking on True Trophies. There's only one other guy that's actually platinumed all five of the games. He beat me to it because I was racing him to do it, and then I unfortunately fell behind. So he's got it right now. I'll probably be number two. But honestly, it's a mix between, trying to relive that nostalgia as a kid for the series, saying I'm a fan of the series to me means this, as well as being a trophy hunter. So it's like, all right, it kind of spurred me on to do it, as well as people saying that I couldn't do it was another thing. It's like, who's gonna do this? You're not gonna do it. I'm like, oh yeah, well okay, I'll show you, kind of thing. So I'm just stubborn, is what it amounts to.
Yeah, no, I can understand. I want to turn back more though towards that nuts and bolts because I
Yeah.
think I think one of the things with JRPGs and especially when they get to this sort of anything over 100 hours is they become very intimidating for people as well. So I know people that have started out on this game. It sounds like you keep a lot of this information in your head, but they actually went about setting up spreadsheets to track different things like that. Do you do that as well, or do you?
Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely. There's no way otherwise. I have a spreadsheet with me for both Star Ocean 4 and Star Ocean 3. As I'm going, I'm taking things off to see where I'm at and where the next gate is, because it's just impossible to track it otherwise.
So what I want to ask you, and this is a selfish question for me. Obviously, I play a lot of shorter games, and they're the games that I've invested,
Mhm.
ridiculous time. Like I think I'm up to 900 hours in Final Fantasy 14 now. But one of the great things about that game was that the trophies ended after like 250 hours. So I don't care.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't matter what I do now. Like I'm just enjoying the game and playing it. So it relieves. I don't want to say a pressure, but it is a pressure. I'm the sort of person that, when I'm playing it, say a longer game, I'm very conscious of a trophy, even if it's 50 hours away. It's in my mind and this sort of
Yeah.
stuff. If I've decided I want to finish it, how do you suffer from that? Because these games are so long. Surely you can't be like that all the time, or does it just, as you say, there's 4 playthroughs. If you miss something, so be it. It doesn't worry you.
Yeah, I mean, especially for this specific trophy hunt, just knowing that you have to do it like five more times, you're kind of like, all right, if I miss this specific thing, it's not that big of a deal to me. For
Mm.
something like I have Red Dead Redemption 2 and I haven't started it because I'm like, all right, look, that's just one playthrough. I need to figure out where everything is, and I know like the platinum comes towards like the actual end of the game. Whereas this, like, I
Mm.
beat the game and now I have another 500 hours of post game running around doing stuff to get the rest of the trophies. So it's kind of a different type of grind, really, if you think about it. Same thing with Final Fantasy 12. I mean, I remember playing that one originally, back when it released, and it was like, all right, as you're going through, it's like, all right, because you have those hunting quests that are going on throughout the game, and I think some of those are missable, or most of them are missable, as well as some items. So it's like, all right, I can't continue the story. I have to go back and do this. I need to get this weapon. I need to talk to this guy to set up this for later. And then it kind of takes away from the story itself because it's like, all right, what was I doing again? And I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to this town, and now I'm at this town. All right, stop, grab this, grab that, grab this. Versus, I mean, this battle trophy system, it's nice in that it's during the fights, so it's like, all right, while you're doing that, going through this, I wouldn't say the battle trophies themselves. There's a couple, like a handful of missable ones, but they're not. You can see them
Mm.
coming. Um, but most of them are like I said. It's like kill 300 enemies or you know farm 200 items or jump 200 times. It's like you can do that whenever you want. A couple of the other ones are like obtain every item in the game, and those ones require a little bit more focus. But a lot of it's still at the end of the game.
That's interesting. Now, what I want to ask is as well. So, we've talked about Final Fantasy 14. That's a massive, MMO, ESO, Elder Scrolls Online as well. 5, 6, not yet.
Yeah.
Massive game as well. Now, these are games that they're MMOs, so there's a social element to them too. So you're investing tons and tons of hours. Do you, like, obviously you're not afraid of the hours, with the games that you play. Do you prefer these single player experiences for this amount of time as opposed to those MMOs and that sort of maybe relying on other people and teams type situation?
Yeah, I try to avoid MMOs like the plague, to be honest with you. I mean, I am married. I have a soon-to-be 2-year-old, and all that. So it's kind of like I can't jump into a raid with you and then ignore everything for hours at a time. Sometimes my wife
Yes.
will have like, hey, baby's crying. Can you go check on her? That kind of thing. So I avoid. I think Destiny was the last MMO type game I played, and then after that, I was like, I can't invest that amount of time. Well, I should say I can't stop everything to invest that amount of time. At least for Star Ocean, it's something I can pause, come back to it, 10 years later. you know?
What you really mean there, George, is you can't stay married and
Yeah, yeah. Basically, if you want to maintain a relationship, then you need to be able to pause.
yeah.
Is what it amounts
Yeah,
to.
no, look, I totally understand. Now, coming back to Star Ocean 4 in particular, so power leveling is nothing new in long JRPGs, and I remember, I think it's this game, but
Yeah.
I may be mistaken here. A friend who played it said, "Oh, look, all I do is I start the game, I turn left, and I'll come back in 2 weeks." And he'd set up a system with a turbo control and possibly a Chronos Max to level. So, is there a lot of this AFK leveling in Star Ocean 4 or not?
Star Ocean 4, no. You really can't. I mean, there is one spot where I guess you could, but no, well, no, you can't do it there either. Yeah, you really can't AFK in Star Ocean 4 at all. Star Ocean 3, there was an area where you could, but I mean, if you want to leave the game on for 5 weeks straight, then I guess. Um, but at least these specific games, there's ways to quote unquote they build it in, but it's breaking the game to where you can get to those end game levels pretty quickly,
Mm.
relatively quickly. They usually because there's an item creation, there are secret enemies, and then there's like experience boosters that you can get. And whenever you are able to create something and it involves experience boosting or whatever, you can break any game. So specifically Star Ocean, I think they do it on purpose because it's like, all right, look, you're still not gonna be able to like walk through the hidden boss. Like she's gonna kick your butt. So this is gonna get you there quicker because I mean there's not much between here and there. So let's get you to the max level so you can be prepared to do it. Um, and then they cap off at 255 anyway. So once you get there, I mean you're pretty much done.
Yeah. Yeah. So does that mean one of the things that I liked about Final Fantasy 12 is it's not really level gated. I mean, it is in a way. I mean, you maybe need to be at certain levels to take on the bosses, but it's not locking content per
Mm-hmm.
se. In that way, as something again like 14, sorry, is very Final Fantasy 14 is very level gated.
Mm-hmm.
And it involves grinding to meet certain levels to access parts of the game. Is the grind then sort of natural in Star Ocean if such a thing can exist in such a long game, or are you physically just standing in one spot whacking something for hours at times?
So yes and no. So yes, and the fact that if you're in the regular game, absolutely, it's very streamlined. It's like, all right, I go have to fight this guy in the story. You're in this next area, you kill a couple enemies, fight the boss, kill a couple enemies, fight the boss. And even in the post game, it's all like different floors, whether it be 1 to 20. As you're going, you're fighting a natural slew of enemies to lead up to the final hidden boss, whoever it is. Um, However, the asterisk in these for the trophy hunting experience is for just for 3 and 4. I don't remember 5 having this. Maybe it did, but there is a progressively harder modes that you have to beat. So it's usually Earth mode, Galaxy, Universe, and then annoying mode is the best way I could put the fourth one. It's like, why did you do this mode? Like, so that's kind of what I'm going through now. Is like the enemies just hit you and you die, and if you try to hit them, they block, and then they hit you and you die, and it's like, okay, I'm gonna go back 3 screens and fight this weak thing that gives me no experience to level up now, and try and figure it out. But that aspect of it is a little bit tedious, but like the regular gameplay is usually very easy.
Yeah, okay. And I have just one more follow up I want to ask here because it would be remiss of me not to ask this question because it fascinates me. George, talk to me about the bunny races.
So the world of Star Ocean is similar to the world of Final Fantasy, in which they have a mascot. In Final Fantasy, you have the Chocobo, among other things like the Moogle and such. In the Star Ocean series, you have the bunny, which is it's an alien bunny. It looks mostly like a bunny. I guess it's generally pretty huge, large enough for you to ride. But but yeah, I mean, for the first two games, it is a convenience. For the rest of the games, it is not.
Mhm.
um, one and two, like if you find the bunny or get the bunny skill, you can summon a bunny, and it just helps you traverse the world map without having to fight things, which is very, very nice to have. In three, it is no, yeah, this is such a stupid trophy. Um, so for three, you go to this casino world, and they have bunny races there. And you can bet on the bunny races, and if you win, you get three freaking bunny coins or whatever. And if you lose, you get nothing.
Mhm.
It's all RNG based, and in order to get the trophy for the bunny races, you need 900 or yeah 900 coins, or it might be 1,000. So like I said, completely RNG. If you win, if you bet one out of four, you get three coins. So this is where I put in my turbo controller. I was like, nope, I'll just leave it running overnight. Come back in the course of 8 hours, I'd probably get 200 coins. So it took me about a week or so to end up getting this trophy. And I was like, why the hell did they put this in here? Um, in four, it is still pretty painful. Not quite as stupid painful as that one, but you actually control. You can actually ride the bunnies, and you're racing kind of like the Chocobo races from Final Fantasy VII. But yeah, you build up a bunny to, you can build up its stats, and then you can do a race and you can control it. And once it's maxed out, it's fairly easy, but you have to do 100, you have to win 100 hard mode races, which the hard mode really doesn't matter once you max it out. It's just doing 100 races each at about like 4 minutes each takes a long time.
I can.
And once again, I can't remember anything from five. I don't remember it being that big of a deal.
I love the Japanese bullshit element that's always in these games. It's
Yeah, they just had to put that in there, and I like my motto is that Triace hates people and their happiness. So it's kind of what it is.
So I think we're wrapping up a bit. I have a question
Yeah.
about not necessarily about Star Ocean, but just longer games in general. How do you? Because it's not just
Mhm.
Star Ocean that you've platinumed 100%. You've done this for several long platinums. I'm looking at your list. You've done No Man's Sky. You've done Fallout 76. My
Mhm.
condolences. You've done Grand Theft Auto 4. You've done 3D Dot Game Heroes. While obviously there's not as long as Star Ocean, these are not short platinums. Like the fastest, platinum earners on these are still several days. And those tend to be people who are just either insanely good or
Mhm.
they're constantly playing until it's done and not sleeping. And Red Dead Redemption, you did the first Red Dead Redemption. That one took me like 7 years. I think I've passed it up, but I think it took you a couple of years to 100%. I don't know about the platinum.
Yeah, I stopped and
Yeah,
got back
same
into it.
same with me.
I got, yeah, 100% took a long time.
How do you kind of? Because for me personally, it's almost OCD. Like I like having my completion percentage in the mid to high 90s. You're at 70, around 76%. That's not bad, but it's also not what I would call I think you wouldn't really call yourself a completionist.
I don't know. It looks all right to me, George. I think you're doing fine.
Well, I mean, compared to CJ,
So
but like,
yeah,
CJ's completion percentage is up there just by sheer brute force of spam platinums. But
yeah, yeah.
how do you find the motivation to, especially because you do intersperse it with these kind of palate cleansers of 20-minute platinums. How do you find the motivation to stay with the long game, to see it through? Because Red Dead Redemption, it's a slog, man. And
Yeah.
I'm sure, at least in one of these games, you were just like, why am I doing this? Why don't I just
Oh,
stop?
absolutely.
So how do you kind of push over that and say, no, I'm gonna do it?
Especially during Star Ocean 4, I felt that way quite a bit. I mean, in the course of 600 hours, you look at your life quite a few times. Uh, but
Well, that's just the existential dread that you get for being a trophy hunter.
yeah,
I mean, for these games, for specific games.
yeah. Well, honestly, my journey in this whole thing has changed quite a bit. My original trophy hunting percentage was probably like closer to 50. And
Mhm.
that was about 2 years ago. And it wasn't till about 2 or 3 years ago when I really dug into, PlayStationTrophies.org and PSN profiles and started getting into these challenges and talking with other trophy hunters that I started like looking at that stuff and being like, all right, what kind of message, what kind of trophy hunter do I want people to think I am? And I think everyone kind of initially falls in the trap of like, I'm gonna be number one. I'm gonna catch them all, be the very best that no one ever was. And then you see Hakum, and you're like, well, yeah, I'm not doing that. Um,
Oh, CJ, there's your Pokemon reference.
and
Let it go.
yeah,
Let it go.
so I think, well, like I said, my focus has changed quite a bit over time. I went on a kick of completion for a while there, so that led me back to these older games that I didn't finish, like Red Dead Redemption and 3D Dot Game Heroes, and a lot of those. I was like, okay, I'm not only gonna get the plat, I'm gonna get 100% because I want to raise my completion. So all these old things I need to finish. Same thing with Star Ocean 4, really. And so that kind of got into that kick, and then I was like, well, I'm never gonna get 100%. I don't think I'll ever get over 95% because I just by sheer amount of dead trophies that I have. So it was like, what am I, what am I, what is my goal here? Um, what am I trying to do? And so I've kind of gone between, I like getting harder platinums. Like the ultra rare is kind of where my jam is. So the more you say like, I'm not gonna do that, like I can't do that, the more I'm like, I'll do it. So like it's almost more of a it attracts me more. So much so, like, I hate Souls games, and it makes it so much easier for me because they're very popular. So, like, those aren't ultra rares. I think those are all, like, rares to uncommons, like 20% or so. So I'm like, all right, good. I don't need to do this miserable thing because it really won't mean anything at the end of the day because everyone's done it anyway. So it doesn't stand out. Something like I want to say Harvest Moon, Stardew Valley, where it's like, all right, that's like 3%, 4%. People haven't done that. Like, what's going on with that? Oh, it's got this one heart trophy. He's like, I could do that, and put in the time and drill through it and actually get it done. Like, I kind of get more out of that than just other games that take a long time, but like everybody can do it, kind of thing. I think it makes it a little bit more special to me, if that makes sense.
So
Yeah.
so for you, yours is the satisfaction of seeing the ultra rare on
Honestly,
your trophy card.
that is like the more rare it is, and the more people say like the people may not even say it, but they're like, he's not gonna. I think I've built up enough of a reputation now to where people are like, all right, look, if we say this, he's gonna go do that. Like, so I don't think that's it, but like the perceived notion of a specific game where it's like people don't get this. Those are the type of games that I kind of want to go after.
And yet,
Hmm.
and yet,
Yes.
I see no Friday the 13th on
Yeah.
your trophy card.
I also have to have fun, I guess. Um,
That's
I mean, you got me
fantastic.
there. I can't argue.
She is
I had
speechless on
fun,
that.
but very little of it came from the game. It was mostly the conversations I had with my boosting
and
buddies.
and that falls back into the whole online game thing as well. It's
Yes.
like I need to be online for a long time to do that, and that's another big long slog that I don't know if I'm ready to step into. And I wasn't that big of a fan of the Friday 13th in the first place, so it's kind of like maybe one day. I don't know, probably not. I'll probably die before I ever get a chance to play it.
That's interesting. One of the things that I find interesting, like, you talk about 600 or 1,000 hours in a game, and I mean that's horrifying. To me, that's horrifying. But it's not like, and I know this is obvious if you think, but it's not like you're spending 600 hours. Well, George, you possibly are, but 600 hours in 1 year. This is like I look at my Final Fantasy number, and I'm like, that's appalling. I should be doing something else. But my longest session in that game is probably 4 hours. That's a long session for me. So the hours just accrue, don't they? As well, it's not like necessarily you go in knowing this is going to happen. It's an overtime thing with these games, isn't it? It's not a rush.
Yeah, and that's the other thing, and I try to avoid this, and I end up falling in this trap a lot anyways, but it's almost like a Zen state that you get into. It's like, all right, I'm gonna go do this.
Yes.
I'm gonna listen to podcasts. I'm gonna have this thing going on. You're just kind of just doing the grind kind of thing. And I kind of like that. So games like No Man's Sky and Fallout 76 are perfect for that. It's like those are the games that, once again, nobody likes to play them. Where they're actually, if you look past, some of the obvious stuff, they're fairly good in their own right, and I enjoyed them. But it's also that zen of like, okay, I'm on this planet, I need to get resources. Like, I'm almost like mentally detached from what I'm doing, and just kind of going through the motions. And I don't know, it's kind of peaceful in a way.
Yeah, I like that. I do. So, look, I think that was good. That was very interesting for me, and I hope for your listeners, because it's a game that, like, we all know, everybody knows about it, and that series, but very few people dive in, and it's even rarer to have someone who's so immersed actually tell you about the game. So I think we're very lucky there. And look, I'm well aware, listeners, that we need to balance it out from the longest game on the PlayStation to the shortest. So we will do that now, and we will go across, George, to an area that, as you've said, it's not your forte, but look, you can slum it in the gutters with us for a few moments, I feel. And
well, he needs to find the next things to play between long plats.
Probably needs to find the things to avoid. But
honestly, like I was tempted to play a couple stacks of mayo to stage my next game, but I was like, I don't want to hear about that from CJ.
No. To be honest, we seem to have this effect on people where they feel they have to play some spam before they come on. You'd be surprised how many people have just ruined their trophy card, with some games that they think would appeal to me, and whatever. But let's jump in. Who wants to throw something out for our spam of the week?
Can I throw out? I hope it's spam. But probably not now that I've seen the last trophy on the list. Sharknado VR, Eye of the Storm.
Please do.
What?
I would call this spam, but now I'm looking at the list, and the last trophy is complete the game without dying.
Yes.
So probably not, but wish it was for that VR that I don't own.
Yes. Sharknado VR, Eye of the Storm, the game we didn't need, Mindi, but the game that we deserve. I think that's fantastic. What else have we got here? Look,
that coffee talk looks like it's probably gonna be spam.
Yeah, I agree. Well,
who makes it?
This looks like, remember that game? What's the? I think it's spam with guide. This looks like, I know it's not the same developer, but it looks like Valhalla, except it's a coffee shop instead of a bar. Because it has trophies like serve 50 cups in a single session.
Get all gallery.
Yeah, I think until it actually comes out, I feel comfortable comparing this to Valhalla, except it's a coffee shop. Which is a very bold claim. I feel comfortable with it. I'm gonna throw out Foxy 2.
Yes.
Foxy Land.
Yeah.
2.
I think we should put a disclaimer on this game. So I've heard some people say that they're getting frustrated with this game, and I just want to point out that look, I understand this, but one of the burdens we bear as Rata Platters is, that our skills are deteriorating all the time. We're getting to the point where we just, turn the game on. So, look, I understand your frustrations that you've lost your ability to jump, and land on a spot, but this game does require that, and I know, I understand these problems, but go in knowing that this is not it's not a guide will not help you here. You do need a basic skill level of like maybe a 0.1 out of 10 to plat this game. Yes.
I actually, I played the first Foxyland during the hiatus, and it annoyed me a little bit. Not because it was difficult, but because it had heavy controls. So I usually talk about platformers when they don't have solid controls. They're usually kind of slippery or floaty. This one was heavy. It never jumps as high as you think it's going to.
Mm.
It has a very low jump arc, and it took a long time to get used to that.
Yes. Well, you'll like this one has a great double jump, but it has a very overactive duck. So it ducks at random times. It's very sensitive. And of course, when you duck, you stop moving. So that can force you to slide off the edge. But again,
Are you sure that's not a problem with your controller?
No, look, no, it's not the controller. It may be the operator, but definitely not the controller in this situation. But look, it's not overly hard, and I think you need 30. I know for trophies you only need 20 coins, but just go in knowing you need 36 to unlock the last 2 to 3 levels you'll need to complete the 20 levels. But look, they're fun to find, and each level is like a minute max or something, so it's fine. Mm-hmm. It's fine. I'll throw out just very quickly. I haven't had a chance yet myself to play it, but I understand this game comes in at 2 to 3 hours, and this is the Lumini. There's both an NA and EU stack. It actually does look quite beautiful as well. So that is definitely spam. We have Music Racer. Music Racer is similar to Color Racer, I suppose. If you have a turbo controller, you're looking at about 4 to 5 hours with a save manipulation there. I do not recommend playing that game. It is not that amazing if you don't have a turbo controller. I don't know. That's a lot.
We got to go back a bit. Did you
please.
Did you do Red Bow and Without Escape?
No, we've had a break from spam for a month, so please.
We have. I couldn't remember if you covered it on
no,
when you were talking to Daryl last time.
Spam free zone, I believe.
Spam free zone. Okay, so Red Bow, it's Radalika from 2 weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
I'll talk about it next time because I have played it, but it is pretty easy. Without Escape, easy but glitchy trophies. There is a workaround that is working so far 100%. If it does glitch on you, it just means you have to play it twice. But it is a quick game if you know what you're doing. It's like 20 minutes, so it's more of an annoyance than a slog.
Yeah.
To play through again.
Yep.
But it's a weird thing where the story related trophies will stop unlocking after 2/3 of the way through the game. And if that happens to you, you need to finish the game and then finish the game to see if it kicks in, because sometimes it'll kick in and it'll unlock the trophy, which is for getting a key with an eyeball on it, which is a story related trophy. Sometimes the next story trophy will trigger the one that missed to also unlock, and that next story trophy just happens to be the end of the game. But if that doesn't work, you need to delete the game, delete your save file, re-download the game, and replay it, and everything else will unlock, which means you'll have a completion time of like an hour instead of like a half an hour.
I was just thinking it takes longer for us to explain that than it does to plat that
game.
Yeah,
pretty much. So pretty much.
You can do it in less than 10 on the second. Yeah, good. And then a new category that I'm introducing, although an old category for many of us, us VR owners, is the VR with bucket. And I would put here the Eclipse game. So this is a lovely walking sim, Mindi, but highly bucket effective, this game. So go in knowing that. I think around 2 hours or so with some light puzzling, but very beautiful game. And potentially maybe ported without VR at some point, because it is a mobile VR sort of game, so it's potentially possible that will happen. We shall see. Yeah, that's a lot. Anything else, or can we let them rest there?
I think well, I mean, technically longer spam, not really spam, longer quality spam with guide. That re-release of the Sherlock Holmes Crimes and Punishment game came out. It's easy. Yes. It's fun. I mean, it's a good game. I think I wrote I wrote the trophy guide for this over on PlayStation. I think it was my first trophy guide. But there is a text walkthrough on PlayStation Trophies. I did not write it, but it is a good walkthrough. And like I said, it's longer, but it's a fun game, and it is an easy platinum. So that goes into quality spam. Quality longer spam, or just a good game.
I don't want you to think, George, we've suddenly come alive in this segment of the show. This is it's a passing interest for us, obviously, this spam, but it is what.
I can hear you guys smiling while you're talking about him.
Oh, look, it's been said that I live for this part of the show, but it's true. I can assure you. So look, let's move on then. I've just got a message here from Mindi about a wave.
Oh no!
Sim. I
Why?
missed this one.
I tried to sneaky message you.
Oh,
and now
Sisters
you're
Royale, which we
messing
talked
up
about today. So excellent. So look, let's move on to the Push2Plat Platinum Club shoutouts for the 25th of January here today, and we have Clazer with number 106, Batman: The Enemy Within. And of course, please jump in, anyone, if you have comments. themindisacity, we've talked. We didn't talk about them today, but I'll say them anyway because I think you'll probably talk about them next time. Number 574, I and Me, and number 575, My Memory of Us. Ed the Shed 2014, Platinum number 67, Without Escape. Not used to point and click games, but I think I will play some more as I had fun playing this one.
Oh, sweet honey child.
Yes, yes. And good. That's good to see because you've entered at the basement level here, Ed the Shed. So it only goes up from here. Enjoy. Scottish Nub. Now, sir, I know I gave you very short shrift last time on your Death Stranding Platinum, so I'm elongating the experience this time. Congratulations. That is a massive achievement. It's funny, the more this challenge between us has gone on, the more I've realized how similar in length our games are. We both had about 30 hours of story and then another 120 hours of just busy, boring work. So, who would have thought Death Stranding and Final Fantasy XII would have had so many similarities? Although I think that I may have come out on the upper end, and I do look forward to seeing if you can handle that Japanese bullshit one day. I'm not convinced. But for this week, sir, you have number 335, Resident Evil 5, and number 336, Word Maze by Paugi Asia. Mindi, Easty is back. Number 620, Need for Speed Heat. Pretty cool, best Need for Speed in years.
I realized I'm a little bummed. I realized that I dubbed Easty Beastie on a podcast, and then we got an actual person in the podcast club with a Beastie in his screen name. So we can't call Easty Beastie.
Redacted.
That sounds like a bad AC
Name's already taken.
cover band. Easty Beastie.
Easty Beastie.
Oh, yes. Okay, Zador VP, number 450, Kingdom Hearts Chain of Memories, PS4. I'm surprised, George, you haven't delved into the Kingdom Hearts series as well, actually.
I played them back when they were in PS2, and now,
okay.
20 years later, I'm not, it's going to be a while before I get into them.
Yes.
Yeah. All 400 of them?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, and the comic books and the movies and the card game and whatever else.
Point 1, point 5, point 2, point 3, point 7, 8, 9. So failed to get the PS3 plat, but endured this easier plat, leveling, I don't know about easy, sir, leveling Ariku to 99 took like 12 hours of mundane grinding, though. Well, look, you play all the best games, so, you're not surprised by that. And Eigen Space, number 89, Cat Quest 2, really fun, just like the first. And then our special guest today, he managed to get it in time, Boston George, number 155, Dragon Ball Z Kakarot.
That is Boston George spam, if you will.
That's right. It's good that there's a couple of long ones on that list, isn't there? Yes. we seem to be influencing people in my direction, which is wonderful to see. So, look, again, I'd like to thank you, Boston 10, George. I'm going to do it again. George, I'm just going to say George. I'd like to thank you, George, for joining us today. It's been a real privilege for myself and Mindi to speak to you. I don't speak out of turn here in saying that we both really enjoyed it, and you've opened up a game that we just didn't know a lot about. So thank you for that.
Yes, thank you for having me. I'm glad I got to talk about it.
And Mindi, I'd like to thank you, as always, for joining us. If we're trying to find you, Mindi, where can we find you?
Twitter at themindisacity. I also have a Kofi, ko-fi.com/themindisacity.
Perfect. And George, if you felt so inclined, how could the listeners find you?
Sure. I'm found as Boston George, spelled BOS10 George on PSN Profiles, PlayStation, and then on Twitter it's the same, except it's Boston George LP on Twitter.
So, listeners, if you're looking for us, you can find us on all good podcast providers. If you'd like to reach out and say hi to us, please do. We are on Twitter at push2plat, push the number 2plat. We also have a Discord if you feel like dropping in, or you can email us at push2plat@gmail.com. It feels good to be back at our usual length, listeners. I hope you found something of merit here today. Have a wonderful week. Enjoy the Platinums. We'll catch you soon.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.